Okay, let's unpack this. Sometimes, in really specific, tough environments, a piece of gear isn't just helpful, it's absolutely vital, like a survival tool, really. Failure just isn't an option.
That's absolutely right. I mean,
Mm.
think about places like the deep ocean. It's completely alien to us. You need equipment you can literally stake your life on, stuff that gives you critical info right when you need it.
And this is exactly where the dive watch found its place, wasn't it? It started simple, just timing your dive.
Yeah, basic function.
But it's evolved so dramatically. It's become this sophisticated instrument packed right onto your wrist.
It really has. And
Yeah.
today, we're doing a deep dive into one particular watch that marked a huge step in that evolution, a real turning point, the Citizen Aqualand.
Right, the Aqualand. And here's where it gets really interesting, and this is kind of the core takeaway from the source material we looked at.
Yeah.
The original Aqualand was the first dive watch to successfully integrate an electronic depth meter right into the watch itself.
Which was a massive leap for its time.
Yeah.
So, our deep dive today is really about helping you understand the key points from the source material on this watch. We'll unpack why that original Aqualand was so significant.
And then look at how Citizen's honoring that legacy now with this new anniversary edition.
Exactly, helping you get the full picture.
Okay, so let's jump back. 1985. This is really the dawn, you could say, of the integrated electronic dive watch. The source material really focuses on that original Citizen Aqualand, the reference C00023.
And you really can't overstate what an achievement this was. The source is super clear on this. Putting a reliable electronic depth gauge inside a wristwatch, one that also had to withstand serious underwater pressure. That was incredibly difficult.
Right, because before this you might have, what, a separate depth gauge?
Exactly. You'd have your watch and maybe a dedicated electronic depth meter. Clunky. The Aqualand, it was the first to really combine them successfully. On your wrist. One tool.
And visually it was just, wow, instantly recognizable, right? What jumps out when you look at pictures of that original design?
Oh, yeah. It had this totally distinctive asymmetrical shape. Big watch, 50.7 millimeters across, about 14.8 thick.
Huge for the time.
Yeah. But the unmistakable part, that large sort of cylindrical depth sensor sticking out prominently from the left side of the case.
It really looked like a piece of serious kit bolted onto a watch, didn't it?
It absolutely did. It wasn't just for show. It screamed instrument.
So that sensor was key. What was going on inside? What was powering this combined functionality?
Inside you had the caliber C022 movement, and its genius, according to the source, was how it managed to display both standard time and your real-time depth. Digitally.
Ah, on that little screen.
Yeah, in a dedicated screen in the upper part of the dial.
Okay.
So having that critical depth info right there, next to the time, that was a huge practical advantage for divers, a game changer, really.
You can totally see why original examples from back then are still so sought after by collectors today. They're genuine pieces of dive watch history.
Absolutely. And the source even mentions there were different versions pretty early on. You had the full steel one, the C022.
Right?
Then there was one with gold accents. That was the C033. And even a black PVD-coated titanium version, the C029.
So they were already exploring different looks for it.
Seems like it, yeah.
Yeah.
Trying different materials and finishes.
Okay, so speaking of those original looks, how does Citizen bring that history into today with this new version?
Right, so fast forward 40 years, we're looking at the new Aqualand Promaster 40th Anniversary Limited Edition. And what Citizen's done here, based on the source material, is basically create an almost one-to-one recreation of that original iconic design.
They've really stayed true to it then.
Oh, yeah. They've really committed. The case is essentially identical in its core dimensions and shape. Same, 50.7 millimeters by 14.8 millimeters symmetrical steel case, even down to that matte gray finish like the original C00023.
But for this specific anniversary model, you mentioned they took inspiration from one of those variants, the C033.
That's the one, exactly. They've added gold-plated elements to that matte steel case. So the screw-down crown, the pushers, the unidirectional rotating bezel.
And the depth sensor itself.
And the depth sensor itself, yeah. All get that gold plating. It's a very specific look, clearly chosen to give this anniversary model its own character while directly referencing that specific vintage model.
Now, if you put an original and the new one side by side, the source points out there are some subtle differences, right? Particularly on the dial.
Yes, exactly. Subtle, but noticeable if you look closely. The new dial base, for instance, it has this nice sunray brushed black finish. Gives it a bit more depth than the original map, perhaps.
Okay.
The hour markers are now outlined in gold, and they're luminous, naturally, for better visibility underwater.
Makes sense.
The hands are also oversized. The minute hand is bright orange, really pops, which is crucial for dive timing legibility. And the central seconds hand is gold-colored, tying into those other accents.
And what about the text on the dial? Any changes there?
A couple of small ones. The original said, water 200 meters resist. The new one reads, divers 200 meters at the bottom. It's a small change, but it signifies it meets current ISO dive watch standards.
Ah.
But it does keep the Citizen Quartz branding at the top, and importantly, that essential digital screen is still there, right above the hands, for all the various functions.
And it still has that really steep, angled, minute track around the edge.
It does, yeah. That's another one of those specific design details that carried over from the original. Helps maintain that authentic vintage feel.
What about the back of the watch? Anything different there?
On this new version, the case back screws directly into the case. That's generally seen as a more modern, robust method compared to some older designs that use smaller peripheral screws.
Right.
And of course, being an anniversary model, it features a special engraving celebrating the 40th anniversary of the Aqualand.
Okay, so they've recreated the outside incredibly faithfully. What about the engine? What's powering this modern tribute?
Inside the new Aqualand, they're using the quartz caliber C520. And this movement provides a really comprehensive set of functions, all detailed in the source material. It makes it a serious tool watch, not just a looker.
Okay, let's run through those functions because it sounds like quite a list.
Yeah, it is. So you get your standard timekeeping, obviously. There's a calendar function, a daily alarm. You get a 60-minute chronograph that's accurate to 11/100th of a second.
Pretty precise.
Very. Then, crucially for diving, it includes an ascent alarm function, which is vital. It warns a diver if they're coming up too quickly.
Safety feature, okay.
Definitely. There's also a dedicated diving timer function, and of course, central to the whole Aqualand identity, the digital depth indication.
Wow, that's a lot packed in there. Does the source mention practical stuff like battery life or accuracy?
It does. It states a battery life of around 2 years, and accuracy is quoted at plus or minus 20 seconds per month, which is pretty standard for a good quartz movement.
And the strap.
Right, it comes on a black polyurethane strap. And interestingly, the source notes it's made from something called benebiole, which is described as a biomass-based material.
Okay, so a bit more eco-conscious maybe.
Seems like it. And it features that signature wave section design you often see on Citizen dive straps, that accordion style.
Yeah, I know the one. It's not just for looks, is it?
No, exactly. It allows the strap to flex and expand or contract slightly as your wetsuit compresses at depth, or just for general comfort. Keeps the watch secure.
Right. So for you, the listener, getting these details really helps build the complete picture of this historical remake. The source gives the retail price for the new Aqualand Promaster 40th Anniversary Limited Edition as €497.
And it is a limited production run, 5,800 pieces worldwide. And it's noted as being available as of now, meaning when the source material was published.
So maybe tricky to find, depending on when you're hearing this, but definitely out there. Knowing those specifics really helps contextualize what Citizen's done here. They've brought back an absolute icon of dive watch history, but with a modern engine and some thoughtful updates.
Yeah, it's quite the tribute.
So let's just quickly recap our deep dive here into the Citizen Aqualand's history and its revival. We've looked at its pivotal role, especially that groundbreaking move of integrating the electronic depth meter.
Absolutely. It really stands as an iconic piece because it fundamentally changed what a dive watch could be, bringing that critical electronic depth info right to the diver's wrist reliably for the first time. That was huge.
So what does this all mean? Here's maybe a final thought for you to mull over. A tool like the original Aqualand wasn't just about telling time or even just measuring depth. It was really about pushing technological boundaries on the wrist.
To enhance safety, enhance capability, a really extreme environment.
Exactly. So in today's world, which is just saturated with complex digital devices, smartwatches doing everything, what does it signify when a company decides to faithfully recreate a piece of historical technology like this, one that was so revolutionary in its own day? Something to think about.